What is up, guys? It is fight week one. I'm super excited for UFC 271 Alessandra versus Rob Whittica 2. It's a massive rematch. It's super exciting. I want to jump into a few of the things that I found as usual. Couple of stats, couple of numbers, and my thoughts on a rematch. Firstly, if you've listened to me before, one of my theories on these kind of high-stake rematches often leading to decision. And I think that's what we're going to see in this one. I don't think we got to see the best version of Rob Whittica in the first event. I think he was a bit over emotional. I think he was a bit overwhelmed. And I think he was, in some regards, a little bit starstruck, if we can put it that way, dealing with the likes of Alessandra, having to go through a bit of banter back and forth before, a lot of things being said about, his heritage, being a New Zealander born, now living in Australia, all the pressure of fighting in front of the biggest event ever in Australia, in the Marvel Stadium. Everybody kind of rooting for you, and then having to mentally go through that whole process and the fear of a guy that was at the time already being billed as one of the greatest strikers we've ever seen. I think the Big Show got him a little bit. I think he went back, he reflected, he was honest, and that's one of the things I've seen in the build up to this fight already, from Rob Whittica. A super honest team, acknowledging the task in front of them, acknowledging the mistakes that they made, and really just looking at things really honestly, which bodes well if you're a Rob Whittica fan. They've gone back and they've changed things, and I think we've seen Rob Whittica rebuild himself, in the rerun, I want to say, against guys like Jared Cannonier and all the other the guys he dealt with on the way back up to get his title shot. And he's looked great. And I think the main difference that we've seen is a well-rounded Rob Whittica. I think he was well-rounded when he fought Izzy. I'm not saying he wasn't. I just think he's figured out how to bring those tools back into his game, which makes him insanely dangerous. He's incorporated more wrestling. He's even just throwing a takedown just to give you that bit of hesitancy, to make you think, give you a different look. His striking has evolved a little bit more patient on the feet. I remember watching Rob Whittica on the come up, and there's two things I want to talk about here. Very, very good at closing distance, but against a guy like Izzy, it's what eventually cost him that fight. From very far to very close, from like, depends how guys would call it, from like a red zone to a green zone to a red zone, and close that distance extremely erratically to some degree. It worked for him in the younger days, but as the guys got more and more advanced, it became a bit of a problem, especially against a guy like Israel Adesanya, who we know caught him with that beautiful hook in the first fight. As he, in fact, like closed the distance, there was a bit of like in the pocket kind of exchange, and then he was dropped. The other thing I want to talk about, if you watch Rob on the come up, and I know I was paying reasonably close attention. I'm not going to say I was his avid fan, but he was a super unassuming character, and I think this has been the story of his career. Winning fights that nobody thought he would win, and I think that kind of mentality will give him a bit of confidence here. I don't think anyone kind of really on paper, if they're being 100% honest, really expects him to win in a rematch, especially after being knocked out in that fashion in front of all of your home fans and having to go back and deal with all of that. So I think most people, if they're being honest, especially on like Izzy's side, would say there's no chance of him winning this rematch. What's going to be different this time? But I think having that experience of being the consummate underdog through most of his career, I remember Yoel Romero, I don't think most people thought, like, how is he going to beat Yoel? He's a beast. If Yoel just adopts a second of wrestling, it's over. And then obviously they were close fights, but he came out victorious and became the champion. And I think that's been the story of most of his career, to be honest. Excuse me. It is early in the morning. So, I think he'll draw a lot of confidence from that. I think he's been very honest with himself, and he's very aware of the fact that it's probably the hardest fight of his career coming up. But it's going to be exciting to see the adjustments he makes, how he deals with the distance, and what he knows about Israel now, and how it feels, and which ranges are dangerous and what's difficult. Will he mix it up? Will we see a little bit more wrestling? Will we see a little bit more clinch work? Will we see Rob close the distance and try and get his hands on Izzy? And not to say, I know this is a big theme of that Jan Blachowicz showed a blueprint on how to beat Israel Adesanya. I don't think that's correct. I think Jan Blachowicz is a completely different animal, completely different size, completely different weight class. I mean, if you remember the fight, Izzy walked in below the limit. I'm sure Jan Blachowicz had to cut a substantial amount to make 205. I just don't think it equates into Israel's actual weight category. I just don't think that unless there's a guy that's cutting tremendous amounts of weight and can wrestle to a super high level, that's really going to happen. And that being said, Rob's wrestling is of a high level. I don't think most people realize it. Like, I think he was supposed to be, Australia wanted him to go to maybe even to the Olympics. I might be mistaken, but very high level wrestler. And I think that might be a factor going into this fight. It might be something he's wanting to adopt, not to expect massive double leg takedowns, but definitely maybe to throw in a takedown here and there just to keep Izzy guessing. And the other side of Izzy is again a guy who's just constantly evolving. As much as we've seen Rob rebuild and come up again and re-earn that title shot, you're definitely not going to have an Israel Adesanya who's kind of just sitting on his seat. He understands what's at stake. He understands now it's time to build that legacy and really run it through. So he'll definitely be spending a lot of work and a lot of time in the gym trying to figure out mistakes and know that Rob Whittica is going to be the best version of himself and really bring it to them. Again, it's going to be this. And when we get into the stats, I'm going to pull out a couple of things. It's distance management. We know the city kickboxing guys using a lot of feints, drawing out reactions. But I think that that's been their thing till now. And I think guys are going to slowly start to figure that out and how to deal with those feints and how to not give big reactions and those kind of things. I also think, what are we going to see new from Israel Adesanya? That's what I'm thinking about. What is he going to bring that's different? And I think we have to expect something. Whether it's a cleaner bit of striking, more polished style. We've seen that team adopt a lot of leg kicks, a lot of feints. That's kind of been their thing up until now. But what's going to be new? It's definitely going to be, I would think that there's going to be something fresh that they bring, a new game plan that they have. And I'm excited to see that. To see how that all plays out. Two brand new type of game plans to deal with the same opponent is super intriguing to me. I just want to pull up. Let's start with the tail of the tape. That was the one I really wanted to get into, just to take a look at those numbers. Okay, so the records, experience, fairly similar, age fairly similar. The big differences coming in at the bottom there. 4 inches in height for Israel Adesanya, and that equates to a reach as well. Call it 6.5 inches reach advantage. And I think that's something quite common for Izzy. I think he's often got a bit of a reach advantage. I feel like Rob Whittica is probably, I don't want to say on the short side. I think 6 foot is pretty average at like light and welterweight, but I mean, he's been the champion before, so it's not like it really detriments him. But those are the things. It's closing that distance, and I think Izzy is really good at fighting at the range he wants to fight at. And an interesting thing, if you've watched in the build-ups, he's got a new coach that's basically, they do long range kicking. That's what the coach does. The guy comes from like a taekwondo and a karate background, and literally his job is long range kicks, which is interesting. And I think that's something that you're going to see a lot of. He's excuse me, Izzy has like some beautiful question mark kicks, some beautiful leg kicks, very, very varied leg kicking attack, as well as what he brings with the hands, dynamic striking. That Rob Whittica, also a great, one of Rob Whittica's favorite combinations is that like 1-2 in the same side right kick, for example. Super good at it, gets it up really quickly, really fast. It's going to be an intriguing matchup from that standpoint. But I think it's interesting that we're seeing a guy in Israel Adesanya's camp that's bases purely just there for long range kicks, which is interesting for me. Some of the numbers I picked out, as I like to do, to kind of gauge where, not to gauge, but give a bit of a guess as to where the fight's going to go, maybe what's going to be different, and what to look out for. So if we look at Izzy, 15 KOs, 71% finish rate, strikes landed per minute, which is pretty high, 3.94, with a 50% striking accuracy, which we would expect. I mean, this is Izzy's bread and butter. Good volume, good accuracy, great striking, takedown defense. So in my mind, I think we might see a bit of wrestling thrown in by Rob Whittica, even if it's not to like affect the wrestling game plan, just to give Izzy something else to think of. And that's why I put the takedown defense in there. And then obviously the fight performance of the night. So the 80% defense, and we want to see how that's going to translate over to Rob's defense skills, if we can put it that way. Let's just open that up. Okay, Mr. Whittica, 9 KOs, 5 subs with a 61% finish rate. Not a much, but a substantially higher volume at less accuracy. And that's quite common, I think, when it comes to volume and accuracy. Often tends to be if there's guys throwing at a higher click, the accuracy does tend to drop. Takedown accuracy, 34%. So like I said, I mean, Rob has got pretty good wrestling credentials, but it hasn't quite translated. 34% takedown accuracy is not great, if we're honest, especially against a guy with such a high takedown defense. So interesting to see. In my mind, that's definitely something I think they would want to do, even if it's clinch work up against the cage. He's going to have to beat those stats in order to make it effective, is all that I'm saying. Okay. Besides that, obviously, which is a great card, there are some momentous fights on this card. I think it's one of those where we've seen, we're so focused on the top of the bill that we've forgotten about the rest of the card. So let's quickly have a look at the card, and then I'm going to give you my picks as well as the times. Okay, so let's go to the bottom of this one. These are the early prelims. Jeremiah Wells versus Mike Diamond, the man they call the Black Diamond, who is kicking things off for Team City Kickboxing. A lot of hype around this man. Super unconventional. Exciting to see him make his debut as the latest addition. Douglas De Andrade versus Sergio Morozov. Nice fight. Jacob Mulcoon, also Australian. Carlos Ulberg is the second of 3 members of Team City Kickboxing, who was really impressive in his previous outings. Bit of a wild man, massive man, and this guy is a future prospect, obviously coming out of New Zealand. Going to be super interesting to see how these guys perform as a unit. I think City Kickboxing has been pretty good, especially when they've had numbers. They've performed pretty well. I think the team ethos and that kind of thing rides really high on these kind of fight nights. So that's a great one to watch. Alexandra Hernandez and Renato Moicano are somehow on the early prelims, which is crazy to me. It's such a great fight. But obviously trying to attract people to UFC Fight Pass. Mana Martinez versus Ronnie Lawrence, not too shabby. And then William Knight, who is a beast of a man, versus Maxim Grishin. Alex Perez versus Matt Schnell, also way down on the prelims, which is super interesting. Two possible future contenders in the flyweight division there. Casey O'Neill versus Roxanne Modafferi. Great fight for the ladies division. The former EFC heavyweight champion, Jared Van Der Raar, gets a massive opportunity against the Pitbull, Andrei Arlovski, which is a super entertaining fight. Excited for this one. Big opportunity here for Jared. Obviously you beat a legend like Arlovski, and everybody wants to know who you are. So good luck to Jared there. That's a massive opportunity for him. Into the main card, and I'm going to give you my picks, and then I'll pull up the pick screen and I'll try and quickly justify how I've made these picks. Bobby Green, Nasrat Hakparat, or AKA Gastelum Jr. This is an exciting one for me. I feel like Bobby Green has become so good at winning fights that he's not supposed to win on paper, if we can put it that way. Super technical. Stand-up is really, really good. He knows how to win fights, and he's been on a bit of a tear. He's got this kind of like, I want to say, easy come, easy go kind of attitude, but more of a like, doesn't really care too much about the outcome, but more about putting on a performance. He took Rafael Fiziev to 3 rounds in what was a cracking fight in his last one. I do slightly have Nasrat ahead here, and I'm going to go with him for the pick. It's a bit of a risky pick, if I'm honest. But I think after what he's been through, previous stuff, I think he lost his mom during COVID. Still came out and fought, was quite emotional, got the win. I just feel like we're looking at a new version of Nasrat. And I think he knows that a good win here is going to just up him in terms of the rankings and put him in a better spot. So I think it'll be a great fight, but I do have Nasrat in that one. Kyler Phillips and Marcelo Rojo, these are 2 rising bantamweights, all out pace. This is going to make you tired just watching it. I do have Kyler Phillips in this one. I think he's a substantial, you can see they're minus 400. He's substantially a favorite. And I think that's for a good reason. Jared Cannonier, Derek Brunson. So last night, I think I picked Derek Brunson, and this morning my head's telling me to go with Jared Cannonier. But I'll stick to my picks with Derek Brunson. I think this will go probably to a decision. I do feel like Jared Cannonier is slightly neater in his approach, the way he does things. His punches are a bit neater. He's a bit tidier, a little bit more down the middle, a little bit more conventional. Derek Brunson's a bit of a wild man. Obviously, we know Derek's wrestling is really good. I'm interested to see how his wrestling pays off against a guy as strong and as athletic as Jared Cannonier. That's going to be intriguing to me. Super interesting matchup. And obviously, these guys at the top of the bill is the middleweight division's summit. So 2 guys that'll be super interested in what happens at the top, and at the top will be super interested in what happens between these 2 possible future title contenders. So it's a heavy stakes match for the both of them, and it's a massively exciting matchup. I'm so intrigued to see how that one plays out. Much like the next one, Derek Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa. Derek Lewis obviously a slight favorite in this one, and I think when it comes to these 2, these are 2 bona fide entertainers, man. One's doing a shoey, one's taking his pants off in the octagon. MMA wins in this fight, if you want to put it that way. These are great entertainers, not only in their antics, but also the way they fight. I don't think these guys are going to hold much back. I think one of them is going to get knocked out. I think Derek Lewis is going to have that slight experience advantage, and I think that's where the bookies are giving him the nod here. The cool thing about this fight is this one's for the fans. Like, I don't think it really matters in terms of a career who loses here, barring maybe if Tai wins this fight, he's all of a sudden amongst the top dogs. But I just feel like this one is for the fans. It's like a gift, It's like, here you go, guys. Let's put these 2 crazy guys in a cage and just kind of see what happens. If they lose, they lose. If they win, good for them. I don't expect there to be too many ramifications for losing this one. This is definitely just one for the fans. I've picked Derek Lewis in this one, again, purely based on that same reason. I just think he'll have a slight power advantage as well as the experience advantage, and I think that's going to be the difference. And then obviously at the top of the bill, Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittica. I've already given my thoughts on that. They've got Izzy at a minus 280, which is a little bit disrespectful, I think, guys. Come on now. Let's give Bobby Knuckles a bit of a chance there. But he is a favorite for a reason. Obviously, it's a rematch. He has won before, so you kind of get where they're coming from. But a massively exciting rematch. I think this one's going to be a intense fight. I think we will see a decision here. Yeah. So those are my picks. I'm going to pull that up now to see the way I've put it out in case I've missed something there. I feel like the biggest problem for me has been the Cannonier versus Brunson fight. I'm not quite sure which way to pick on that one, if I'm honest. Okay, so my picks, let's take a look. Okay, as I said, I've gone with Hexparat, Kyler Phillips, Jared Cannonier today. Well, that was last night. This morning, maybe a little bit more to Derek Brunson. I've gone with the TKO. I was feeling brave last night. Lewis TKO and the decision for Adesanya. As always, if you pick these 5 fights as a parlay, which please don't do, it's super dangerous. But if you've got $100 that you're willing to roll the dice on, head on over to your betting. World Sports Betting will give you 7-1 plus a win bonus. I think $100 will win you about 830 odd. But like I said, it's betting. It's not easy. So good luck. Those I put $100 on that bet there. But yeah, I'm not all that confident, if I'm honest. Okay, the next most common question on fight night is broadcast times, and this is where we're going to wrap it up. Show everybody what you can expect. As you know, it is a pay-per-view, so you will have early prelims available on UFC Fight Pass from 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. The prelims, which will kick off at 3 on UFC Fight Pass, and they cross over on Supersport Action. Guys, just a note on this. If it's not on Supersport Action, it's on 210, it's normally on 208. I know people like panic if they see that it's not there. The UFC is the Supersport is a broadcast partner of UFC. So every card is on Supersport. It's just not going to disappear. It will be there. So if it's not on 210, check 208. That's the rule of thumb. Okay. And then the 5 a.m. main card, which is pretty nice for us as opposed to 4. Comfortable at 5. So that's your broadcast times. Make sure you tune in, enjoy the fights. I will be up and active. So if you want to chat, you're more than welcome to give me a shot. Most importantly, don't forget Friday Night Submission Kings. We've got a massive card for you guys available for free on our YouTube channel. Just search for Submission Kings on YouTube, hit like, hit subscribe, turn the notifications on so you don't miss it. We've got a smorgasbord, if we can put it that way, of fights, super fights. We've got combat jiu-jitsu exhibition. We've got an all-star ladies quintet, and of course the big one, 8-man winner takes all. We've got 8 of the best grapplers in the welterweight division in the country who are battling it out for 10,000 Rand prize, and we're gonna give a belt to our first ever champion. So don't miss out. It's going to be amazing. Massive night for grappling in the country. So check it out. Thanks for tuning in. We'll chat to you soon. Peace.